one of my Amazon Prime Day purchases came in that I was really interested in. I mentioned the other day, I saw a new angle guide I had not seen before. This looks to be a new player on the market. And it's got some really promising, cool features. And it has some awesome modification possibilities here that I'm pretty excited about. Now, this is one of those things where it's like, I wish this company looks like they're going by KFMK. I wish they had just reached out to me and asked a couple of questions, because this product is so close to being perfect. Man, could this be an absolutely amazing angle guide? If they wanted to, they could simply modify this and make an incredible angle guide for 2-inch sanders as well for sharpening. I'm still going to point out all the positive things about it because, look, half the time we end up modifying this stuff ourselves anyway. But here's the first couple things that just jumped out at me immediately. First thing, compared to the old buckle guides that we all use, I love that they recessed these screws for setting the angle guide. That gives you so much clearance that you're not going to have a knife banging into these, which has always been, somewhat of an issue. I've gone to using a knurled nut on the top and literally turning it upside down just to keep it from hitting knives. Now, the one mistake I think they made, or kind of like, I would just call it an oversight, I still think they should have cut away on this side. If they had cut away, only leave the attachment down here and cut this section away, this would be damn near perfect. There's two things they did that I would change immediately, but here's the good news, guys. This can be modified really, really easily. So one, I would cut this away. Simply start grinding some of this away. Get in there with a Dremel tool and cut stuff away. Use a grinder, whatever you would want to do it with. I have plenty of videos showing how I've done it in the past. And in fact, this one we're looking at here, this is one of them that I made myself. I just cut this material out. It's not difficult to do. It takes a little bit of time, but it just works so much better when you do that. Well, that's about the one thing that they missed. The only other thing I would have done is I would have made this longer and this knob smaller. But those are minor things. But I'll tell you why I would do that. So for a Harbor Freight or a Central machine, and I would suspect probably the Buck Tool low-speed sharpener that a lot of you guys like, that's even black, the same color as this, so it kind of match and look pretty cool. This angle guide is immediately able to be put on and will work just great. The thing that's different about this angle guide is you can adjust your belt distance. So you have this screw and handle in the back that clamps it to your platen, your existing platen. And you just start turning this, and it pushes this nice plate here up against that platen. What's really nice about it is they did 2 extra additional screws here and a plate. And what that gives you the ability to do is to adjust that belt distance to exactly where you want it. I mean, you can have it damn near like touching without rubbing. And that's just awesome. Such a great thought when they did that. I also like that they angled this, because this is something I always do that you never see on a lot of these platens. And I've done it with almost all of mine. I've had to cut that in. So many of them leave this thick. They were smart enough to cut that small angle in there, which also helps you get closer. A Central machine or a Harbor Freight style, you'll see here, like this goes on in 2 seconds. It's super easy. You just take it, you slide onto the back of the platen, and you just start tightening down this knob, and it squeezes into that platen and you are good to go. But it also gives you some ability to adjust where you want it. You can go up high, you can come down low. So it's added that ability. Instead of our other ones that just slid on and stopped, this can be adjusted to wherever you want it. So that's pretty cool. Now, it also has a really well-marked angle system. And honestly, I don't care about these marks. I rarely find them to be spot on. I rarely care about these marks, but it's nice to have them just to see where it's set at. I generally, for me, like to set my angles with just an angle wedge. I drop that angle wedge in there and then I tighten everything down. Here's the things that I think would have made this incredibly awesome if they had done it. These are simple fixes. This could work really great on our Toolcker and our Vevor style machines, but they didn't leave a big enough gap here to be able to squeeze it onto the platen. This would work so nice on this machine as well, and it would again give you that ability to clamp this anywhere you wanted. Now my other concern was the size of this knob and was it going to hit over here, but the great thing is I already checked it, and this knob, you can easily take it out, no problem. It's simply held in with a nut. You can take the whole handle apart and you can take this whole thing off. It's actually just an M8 bolt. So what I would do, I would immediately get bigger and longer bolt. It would go into the back here and we would have tons of clearance to the other part over here. We wouldn't be hitting that at all. We could easily tighten this down and without any issues use this right on this machine. In fact, you know what? I'm just going to go do it. Then we can show how well this could work. Okay, I'm going to take this entire thing apart just so I can get to that piece. 2 screws out, and then all 3 parts will be separated. Okay, so there's our whole angle piece, and I am going to just put this over on the side. And here's the part I need to work on. I think the best thing to do is let's show it. Let's see if we can sand it. Yeah, because if we could sand it, you can make this modification with your machine, even if you had no other tools. So let's try that. I'm going to grab me a nice Bora 7 belt here. A heavier duty one. Okay, so probably the safest way to widen this is to come to the bottom. Because up at the top, you could run into your wheel. And we don't want the piece to get, thrown into the wheel. At least if you come down here and you're going edge leading, it's going to be going away from you. So I just came to the very bottom down here where I have the most amount of belt available. And I can see where I'm hitting in here. And I'm just widening this gap. All right, it took me about 5 minutes of sanding. I didn't include that in here because there's just no reason to have you watch me sand this for 5 minutes. And I think we probably have enough. So let's see. I'm going to stop. Let's see if we're there. I think we're pretty darn close. Absolutely. We removed enough. So that's great. All right, so here's my 4-inch bolt. And I'm just going to double check here. But see, yep, I can go up, I can go down. All right, so I have the whole thing back together. We can easily put it on now. I will double check on the handle. We might want to do some sort of handle modification to that. So that we'll have to double check on that part. But we're talking somewhere between a 3-inch and 4-inch bolt. Here's the real benefits of this. Because of this additional plate, we can control the distance to our belt. Now what I would simply do is I would take something, either a belt, you could take the exact belt and put it in here. I'm just going to use a piece of cardboard for example. Well, we could take this piece of cardboard, we can set it in here, and we can set the distance of these two screws and then lock that in. Now we can change how close we run to our belt with that adjustment, which is really nice. Now I'm just going to tighten this down, just hand tighten it. For example, let's see here. And you can see that's pretty darn close to that belt. Now let's see, can we track left and right? Yep, we got plenty of room for our tracking. We can off track a bit. We actually have quite a bit of room in here, which is nice. Now, I would still cut this back. That's me. Some people will just lift up. And I would always add tape to that. But that's going to work. That's going to work great. And then how I like to do it, generally, I like to use these little wedges. So when I'm setting an angle, I generally take a wedge and I put the wedge in. I've always found that to be the quickest way to get the best angle. So if I want 17, I take a 17-degree wedge and I drop the wedge in there. And that's how I do it. Some people like to use an angle guide, which is fine. You can do that too. You just want to zero on the flat part of that platen. Once you have it zeroed out, then you can come up here to the angle and start to set your angle. The main part is just making sure you need to make sure you're flush against your wedge. So sometimes that takes a little bit of adjusting. And whenever you tighten these screws down, it always wants to move a bit. So do a little tightening, little adjusting, little tightening, little adjusting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure that. And I'm going to cut it. I'm going to cut this back the same distance as these. Now, the one downside is, yeah, these are different it's a very different style and a very different setup of plate. So it's not going to work. You're not going to be able to use one of these Cliff Curry angle guides on this. What we can do is use the same dimensions when we make our cutout. I'm just going to get a white marker and I'm going to mark that so I know what I want to take off. Well, went with a bronze marker instead. We can't go as long, and that would be a little bit too much material. So I'm only going to remove, maybe 1.1 inches. I'm going to take about an inch off. So you can see I marked what I'm going to cut into, and now I just need to go to one of my vices. All right. So I'm using a rigid 3-inch cutter, and I'm going to get in here and I'm going to just make all these cuts and we'll see how it goes. Okay, now I want to do the cut right down along this edge. and I want to do the cut across. I think I'll do my cross cut first. All right, one cut left to make, and that's just the along the edge cut to remove that piece. We're through. All right, got a pair of pliers here. Snap that little piece off. There we go, off. All right, I just want to clean this piece up a bit. I'm gonna come over here to my Dremel so I can get in there real good. So I'm just gonna clean this up a little bit with a Dremel tool. A little easier to get in there. Here's another place that radial discs come in handy is when you are doing rough metal work. Some of the rougher ones can work really well on deburring stuff. This is a pretty aggressive one. I think it's 36 grit. Not one I use very often, but it is great for stuff like this. All right, good enough there. The only thing I want to do, I do want to round that corner just a tiny bit so it kind of matches, but in general, I'm happy with that. We are on our way to a new angle guide, new modified angle guide. How cool is that? This fits, gosh, this fits together so nice. They really did a great job. I gotta say, they really did. Minus the seeming like they only thought about one kind of 1x30 to put this on. I think with a little bit more thought, this could have been really incredible. But still, I'm really happy to see a new angle guide. All right, let's get some tape on this. Now I always use frog tape. This is actually frog tape in black, but I like frog tape because I find it's nice and smooth. And some of you are like, what? Well, can't I use any old painter's tape? You can, but I'm telling you, frog tape's better. And everyone that's ever tried this has come back and told me, you know what? You're right. The knives slide better on frog tape. It's really nice, smooth tape for some reason. Oh, yeah. Look at that. All right, let's test it out. And I don't even have that tightened on there really well. Yeah, that is going to be great. I'm curious if I left enough clearance for the Bore 7. Let me grab one of those. So yeah, if I was setting my belt distance, I would probably use the thickest belt that I put on here, which for me would be either a Cubitron 120 or a Bore 7. This is a Bore 7. Plenty. All right, so there you go, guys. There you have it. A new angle guide from KFMK. It's going to be fantastic, and I think you guys will really like that. And if you have one of these Toolcker 1x30s or a Vevor 1x30, and you don't love this, well, I think with these couple tiny modifications, you will really like this. I mean, it's just awesome. And the other nice thing is you can now use all the other aspects of your machine. And I think if you just take the handle off, let's see, You could probably just use the regular bolt. But I'm probably going to modify mine. I'm probably going to get a 3-inch or 4-inch bolt. I'm going to see what, what's needed exactly to go in there with the original handle. Yeah, I think you're looking at you could totally get that on, no problem, with no handle on there. Just tighten it with a pair of pliers. You don't even really need that handle. Yeah, absolutely. That is not going anywhere. So yeah, you could just literally just take the handle off. It simply comes apart, all right? So there's one nut. I'll show you exactly how the handle is. Okay, so here's the handle part. It simply drops in, and it has one nut that's holding it in place. That's all there is to this. So this pops out. So just unscrew this, and once you unscrew this, you can kind of push back on that, and you'll be able to pop the top part of this handle off. Now, like I said, super easy. If you have a 3D printer, you could go make one. I will probably work on making one for this so that you guys can replace it with something smaller, and I will end up putting that on my website. But in the meantime, I would say all you got to do, just for now, just take it off. You don't even need it, really. In all honesty, you could use just the bolt. The only time you would need to take it off and move it is if you were changing the setup of your machine or going to be doing something with your machine where you needed your angle guide off. It's also one of the beauties of this is that, man, is that easy to take on and off. Yeah, 2 seconds to put on, even with just the nut. Grab a pair of pliers. Give that a little snug down. That's not going anywhere. And you don't even technically, you don't even need that handle. But if you want to have it, I would just make sure that you get a size so that it's not hitting. All right, guys, I found the proper bolt. It's an M8 by 70 millimeters long. So if you get an M8 screw that's 70 millimeters in length, you will have a perfect distance where you can use the knob that the angle guide comes with, and you won't have to change it out. You can just swap the screw and replace it with the one that's just a little bit longer so it's not hitting anything else. But you'll see here, you have plenty of room otherwise in there. You might even be able to get away with like an M8 by, I don't know if there's a 65 or 60. That would probably be just fine too. I'm using an M8 by 70 here, and it's working just perfectly. All right, everybody, I'll leave links in the description of this video to where you can get the angle guide. I'll put a link to where you can get the bolts on Amazon if you need the bolts, and you'll be good to go. All right, I'll talk to y'all soon.